we should start. So first I'd like to I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Carlin Benson, Exhibitions Director at Woodstock Byrdcliffe Guild. Thank you for joining our Instagram Live event. The Woodstock Byrdcliffe Guild provides a vibrant center for arts and crafts in the beautiful community of Woodstock, New York. We also are preserving the historic and natural environment of one of the earliest utopian arts colonies in America. We offer a combination of residency, educational, exhibition, and performance programs that encourage creative collaboration among a diverse array of students, arts professionals, artists, and the public. You can access our programming virtually through weekly emails, our various social media outlets, and our website, woodstockguild.org. Today I'm speaking with artist and Byrdcliffe Exhibition Committee member Melinda Stickney Gibson in her studio in Mount Tremper, New York. There will be time for questions afterwards, so please feel free to ask questions in the Instagram comment section, and you can comment and join along with us. I'd like to introduce Melinda Stickney Gibson's work, and I know. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Melinda Stickney Gibson's work involves a diaristic and often literal approach, incorporating tiny bits of writing from her journals, favorite fragments of writing by others. Sorry, I just lost it on my computer, so I have to look on my paper here. And words into her painting and sculpture. Her sculpture work involves steel, glass, lead, concrete, and wire installed on wall-mounted steel ledges or the floor. The sculpture work continues to investigate the same diaristic idea of drawing that is found in the paintings. Stickney Gibson has had over 25 one-person exhibitions and has participated in numerous group exhibitions. She has been the recipient of 2 Pollock-Krasner Foundation grants. You can see more of her work on her website, melindastickneygibson.com. Well, welcome, Melinda. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
And for sharing your studio with us. First, I'd like to start by asking how you're doing during the last few months.
You know, when you first contacted me, you said that you would start with this, and I've been thinking about it a lot. And I'm just going to tell the truth, and the truth is I am emotionally and morally exhausted. And I'm questioning everything. I don't have to, it is what it is, and it's taken its toll on artists. Some work a lot. I, on the other hand, have been physically working, like paint to paper, a little, but mostly I have been writing in my journals and thinking, because there's so much to process, and I don't know how you do it, frankly. The 2 things that I have held steadfast in, though, are that, one, making art is an intimate, profound, essential thing to do. It's without question. Secondly, looking at art, seeing it, going to museums or nonprofits like the Guild is also essential, intimate, and profound. And that goes with the artistic community as a whole, all over, everywhere, is suffering economically, and we're not alone. But that brings me to the point, which I've been thinking a lot about in terms of commerce and art. And I get very confused here because I think artists should be rewarded, but I frankly don't give a damn how many gazillion dollars someone's painting got at auction. It's just, so, you know. But for those of us who are just out here doing it, it's so removed, and I don't know where I'm going with that, except it's like there's the artist life over here, and then there's commerce over there. It's always been a conversation in my head, but now it's even more pronounced. And how to make it, you know, how to support artists. I was thinking, I hope this isn't offensive to anyone, but you know how they send you things about homeless dogs and you can foster them and donate monthly? Going, well, maybe we should donate monthly, you know, pick an artist and donate monthly. It's, anyway,
there have been a lot of,
leave it at that.
there have been a lot of fundraisers lately for artists, and I would encourage everyone to seek those out, and many of them are in your own community. I know Poughkeepsie has one. There's just been a lot of things like that, but probably not enough, you know, so it's always important to support artists.
Well, how do people, and not to mention, you know, people are weary with having to support all of it, you know. Is there a place to find like a central place to find fundraisers to support individual artists?
I don't know of one, but that's something we should look into, definitely. Well, you've been an artist for a long time, so yeah. So I want to talk about your past a little bit, and where, you know, kind of how you've come to where you are today. And I'm going to share some images on my screen, but I know that when you first started out, you were in Chicago, right? And you had a traumatic event, which kind of has definitely influenced your work. And I thought maybe you could talk about that a little bit, and then how you got to New York too.
Okay. So I was living in Chicago. I had an amazing loft there, and one night it dramatically burned to the ground, and I was living with my partner, studio mate at the time, and both of our dogs were lost. And everything before 1986 was gone. All my journals, my slides, my work that was in process or stored was gone, although some collectors and galleries did rally and, you know, sent me images of past work, but there was nothing. I mean, we got out of the building in our underwear, and unbelievably, neither one of us was hurt. I broke my toe jumping out of a window.
How horrible.
So that, you know, it's horrible. And to this day, when I start my wood stove, the smell of smoke, there's a moment of,
yeah, you know, you bet.
But at that point, you know, there we were. We had no home. We had no place to work. And I had a friend who was an artist in the high desert above Palm Springs. And she had a home with a guest house. And she invited us to come and stay as long as we wished. His parents gave us one of their cars. We put our 2 suitcases, which was all we had from friends giving us clothes, and we got in the car and we drove to the high desert in California. And the fire was awful. I mean, awful is such a light word for how it was, but the sense of freedom about what, just what I could do. I realized I was self-imposing all these things about what were expected and how I was supposed to be as an artist and what I was, you know, all of those things. And we worked outside in the desert because the guest house was tiny. And I started painting on lead and concrete and steel, and still working on paper. But it was, I mean, many people who have horrible events have said this, and there is this sense, if you survive, there's this, it's you know, well, okay, so how do you want to live? And how do you want your work to be? And
so here's an image.
Never looked back.
Yeah, this is an image of earlier work, right? And this is actually in the Kleiner James.
after we'd been in the desert for about a year, my boyfriend, partner, still best friend ever, said, if we're going to really, grab hold of art, we need to move to New York. I have to tell you, I was okay, but we did, and it was absolutely the right thing to do. And when we got here, again, we were living in a small little arts and crafts house and working in bedrooms, and I started painting on steel doors, steel fire doors, which is in the image there. And they were not new, they were old, they had a history, excuse me, to them. And I showed them at Little John Smith on Green Street in Soho, and it was reviewed very positively, and it was pointed out in the review, which never occurred to me, that I was using materials that didn't burn. And I went, oh.
Yeah, that's really
I
interesting.
honestly never went there. And this image is from a show that was at the Kleinert in 1990.
Wow, it's great. You have such
by Jen Dragon way back then.
It's great. You have such a long history with Byrdcliffe. That's great. And Jen Dragon, who's also on the exhibition committee. So you two go way back.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
We go way back.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have some other images. This, I'm not sure, I don't know when this show was from, but this might be, this is more recent, right?
This series I did, let's see, I think this was 1999 or 1998, right in there. This was in a gallery in Chelsea, and these are books, actual books, that I had written a secret of mine in. It could be a good thing, a bad thing, a hope, a confession, something. And then I sealed it so you would never know what was in there. And then I encased the whole thing in beeswax and painted on the surface. So
great.
There's secrets, and secrets aren't to be told, but I'm telling you that it's a secret, but you'll never know what it is. So that's an invitation, at least my intention was, it was an invitation to consider your own secrets, the things that you never say in the world.
Yeah.
But it's also a beautiful object.
And you've used text. Yeah, and maybe you could even tell us more about what the use of text in your work, because you've used it for so long, and it's often very subtle, and it's very much in contrast to the material, like something out of steel or stone, and then you have a little bit of text in there, which is great.
Right. Language, speaking, language isn't, but speaking is very ephemeral. You say the words, they're out there. So I'm using these materials that are very grounded, but then I'm putting these little bits of thoughts, of words, very often on vellum, and then taped or attached to the surface, or written very delicately in pencil on the surface, because I want the viewer to look, to go in and look. And I really consider them, I never want to lecture or dictate, but if you don't really show the whole thing, people get up close, and then I, at least in my own case, start to think about things and wonder, and I get more involved in the piece, and I'm engaged in a way that I wouldn't have been if I just went in and went, wow, I really like that painting, and then moved on. So
right.
Is that
I think that's a good answer. Yeah. And also I have some other images here. Yeah, no, it's great. And here's another image of some of your work, and that's from like 2017, I believe.
Right. This was at Thomas Masters Gallery in Chicago. It was, let me see if I'm telling the truth here. Yes, it was the last professional exhibition I had before the whole gallery system blew up. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, and most of my galleries, pretty much all of them, are now online or gone.
Right.
Which is
Wow.
a separate topic and not about this, but
yes.
these,
it's terrible.
It's, again, it's another thing that we have to embrace instead of bemoaning, I guess.
Right.
So these are pieces on steel. The two larger framed pieces are on paper, and the piece at the far left, I call them tapestries, and it is a painting on linen that's hung from a steel bar that's suspended from the ceiling, and there's words and paint, but a lot of the linen is left to be itself and just be there.
Yeah.
So again, it's this idea of transience and materials. I love materials. I love things. I don't want to hide what they are, you know?
Yeah, speaking of that, there's a piece behind you that I'd like to talk about, and I have an image of it here as well. And in addition to talk about the material and transients, and I'd also you have some good news that you're actually going to be showing us in this year, right? So there's lots of things to say about this piece.
I know, and I'm going to try. I have a tendency to go on. So the 11 James Street Art Center in Saugerties, which if you haven't been is really done an amazing thing. But before she renovated the building, I asked to do an installation in there and do a time-lapse video, well, not video, time-lapse, still 24-hour piece of the time and the light on these words, on this piece of very delicate vellum that could fall apart or get hurt or whatever, because the building was falling apart and had all this history. And she said yes. So I did it. I haven't shown the video yet, but she has invited me to do it there, which I will. And in the meantime, she's also doing a show which was scheduled for March, didn't happen, and is now opening August 1st, called Read to Me. And all of the work, I wish I could remember, there's about 7 artists involved. And it's all about language. And they're not all like this. Some are very massive, some are performance pieces, some are traditional drawings on the wall. So
sounds like a great show.
When she sent me an email and said, well, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to open it up. There will be no official opening. You know, people will come in on a staggered schedule. She's only open on the weekends from 12 to 5, I think. But all of that aside, it gets to be seen. I can't tell you the difference it made in my day and pretty much my week so far, because the work is now out there, and there's this thing about what I do all by myself in here, and then showing it to people.
Yeah, that's great.
And they can love it or hate it, but it's there, you know? So.
Yeah, that's nice. It's great to see it behind you as well, and how it changes in the light. And I can't wait for you to share the video with everyone.
You know, things keep happening to it. I keep adding things, and particularly in that period where I've been sitting here looking at it going, it's a new world, and I'm, you know, how is it? How do I fit in? How is it?
I'd also like to talk about the other piece behind you, the piece that's in progress on your wall. I'm looking for a photo. I have a photo of it here too, which is great. It's a person. Okay. It's hard to see on the screen on Instagram, but you can see it on your wall a little bit. It's a person wearing a mask, which is very timely.
Right. There's actually 2 figures. There's the big head, and then there's this sort of pale, vague, rather dejected looking figure on the far left. And in the center of the piece, you know, with paint and sort of with my fingers, I kind of messed it up. It says you. And it was just living there without the mask, just like that, with those two things going on, three things. And I was sitting here, and one day I just stood up. I went, again, the freedom comes in. The preciousness of the image that I was liking so much didn't matter anymore. And I was disturbed with all of the loss and death. And so I just got up, and like, let's say 1001, 1002, that many seconds, I painted the mask and went, it's done. That's it. That's what I was waiting for. So I didn't know it, but there it is. Yeah. And my wall, as you can see, is where I always work. And I love that it has all this history for me. You know, all the work that I've done. I've lived here 15 years. I built this place. And it's got all the shows, all the history, all the critiques, all the parties, all that is kind of on that wall. That's and great. Some of my artist friends go, how do you, that would drive me crazy. Yeah. It matters to me. It serves me. It's great. I love seeing that paint in the back on the wall. It's really amazing. Me too. It kind of, you know, when I come in and I'm, oh boy, what to do, I just look at that wall and think, look what you've been doing. And I remember all the bodies of work and the events. It's really, it's a diary. It's a diary that only matters to me. That's great. Yeah. I think it matters to others too. It's really beautiful to see it. It's part of your process, and you don't get to see that very often. And also it's like the history of what's been made on that wall. It's very, never paint over it. Right. It's great. And I am sort of a slob, obviously. Well, I have one more piece before we go for questions that I'd like to talk about. That's the piece that came from the foundation of your building. I think I have a photo of that too. It's hard, sorry, it's not a great photo as far as, I mean, you can't see the whole thing, but I think it's a wonderful story. And I love how it incorporates text and materials and history. So if you could tell us about that, and then we could take some questions. Well, it's called Think, and it's in the corner of the studio over there. It's a very thin steel wire hanging from the ceiling, hanging over this broken chunk of concrete that was from the pouring of the foundation of my home. And the contractor's like, oh, we'll get rid of all that, don't worry. I said, no, you have to leave it, because this is big for me, and this is, you know, just a piece that I want this. And remarkably, that X that's there was just there. It just happened. So I hung this wire, placed the piece of concrete, broken concrete, and this iron pendulum that I bought in Mexico probably 35 years ago. Because, you know, it's pretty obvious, like it's right over the surface of the concrete, danger. And then the word think on vellum with Scotch tape over it. Because thinking is so, you know, it's fast. It's so fast, and it's so fragile. And so you've got this monster piece of concrete with this really fragile idea. Yes, I love that. I shouldn't be left alone much, right? I think we talked about this earlier, you know, it's also nice to remind people to think, because so many people just look at art so quickly and just glaze over a little bit. And so I think you kind of make the person realize, like, you know, what am I looking at, and kind of bring them into the moment a little bit. Right. Thank you. Which is great. I mean, I hope that's what happens. You know, if you see this in real life, which this one will be in Read to Me in Saugerties. Oh, good. So you get it, you look at it, and you understand its mechanics. And then you have to get close, and you read this little word. And if it were me as a viewer, I'd pause. And that's
Definitely.
the idea.
It's a bit of a reward for also taking the time to look at it more closely. Well, it's great that people will have to come and see it in Saugerties at 11 Jane Street. So I'm very excited about that. Does anyone have any questions?
I am too.
I bet. Yeah. If anyone has any questions about Melinda's work or her upcoming show, you can ask them, and I'll take note, and we can have some questions.
Maybe I probably talked too much.
Oh, some of them are coming in. I just have to scroll down a little here.
Okay.
Art reflects the world we live in and moves us forward. How is the current state of the world playing into your work and collaboration with artists, positively or negatively?
Well, you know, pretty much I've talked about the state of the world has impacted a great deal. I live very quietly. I live like a hermit. I live well, but I mean, well, if you like rice and beans, I live well. So, but the things like the mask piece, that's very obviously in response to what we're facing, what we're dealing with, I think.
Yes.
Is there more to that question? It was big and I forgot.
And also, and like, what are your thoughts about collaborating with other artists, positively or negatively?
You know, I don't collaborate very well. I don't do it. Long ago in Chicago, there's, what was it called? Nature Mort or something? No, the Surrealists had this project where someone would draw something and they'd send it to a friend, and they would draw something and they would draw something. And the things I can't remember the name of the show. It was so long ago.
I know what it is too.
Yeah.
I can't think of it right now.
But the drawings that resulted were beautiful. But you know, once they left my hands, they sort of left my head. So that's about the last collaboration I did, I think.
Fair enough.
Some people feed on that. I'm very much about up here, not participatory so much with others.
That's fine. Yeah. It is what it is, right? Everybody has a different style of working. So
it is what it is. And if it isn't fine, well, oh well.
Yeah. So I have a question. Could you describe how or if your work has changed in the past 25 years? And I also, that kind of leads into another question where someone asked how your work changed, what your work was like before the fire and then after. So it's kind of a similar question.
Oh, before the fire, it was big, macho, Abex kind of paintings. And a little aside to all this conversation, which I didn't address at all, but I've pretty much been a feminist my whole, I think, since I was a kid, but there wasn't a word for it. And for several years, I would do these paintings on paper or pastels on paper, and then I would very delicately sew beads on the paper because it was women's work. And paper was sort of disposable or not as important as a big, you know, painting with lots of paint, and you had two people that had to move it around. I loved the paintings. They were good, I think. But this little bead thing, I was at it for probably 3 or 4 years. And then the fire happened. But as an addition to that, when we were in the desert and I made these little concrete ledges that mounted on the wall, And then I would paint these little lead panels. And I would rest them on the concrete ledge like you do, like you display dishes. If women, you know, when you used to paint dishes and it was considered, well, women's work. And I took these materials that were macho but made them small and presented them. This was all in my head. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just this is how it was for me. And presented them as you would a painted plate or, you know, a beautiful piece of needlepoint.
Interesting. And I have another question. Yeah, I have another question.
I probably need therapy, but no.
Well, yeah, I'm sure having a traumatic event like the fire would have changed your work somehow, you know.
It just changes you. It fundamentally changed me. In the big picture, though, and I would say it was a gift. It gave me a certain confidence that I never had because I saved my own life, you know, so you go, well, if I can do that,
right,
then, you know, approaching a gallery owner is not that scary.
True. That's a good,
it's true.
Oh my. So another, also, thanks for Jen Dragon for pointing out the name of the drawing is Exquisite Corpse. The drawing where you fold the paper, which we both were like, I knew what it was, and I didn't want to say the wrong, I was like, oh, but anyway, I'm glad she said that, because I would have been worried about that. So another question is, do you participate in artist residencies? And if you have, do you find them influential to your work?
Truthfully, it's a very seductive idea, and I would really like to try it. My probably excuse, I would say, is that where I live is so remote and amazing. Honestly, I think I should give somebody from Manhattan the chance to go. No, I don't, is the answer. I don't, but that's not to say I don't want to. I am, and if they would let me take the dog, I would do it in a minute.
Oh, yes, they should have a residency for people with dogs. Yeah, I mean, I've talked to a lot of artists who have these beautiful studios, and they kind of say, well, you know, I'm so happy here, I don't need to go somewhere else. But there's also different reasons for going to residency, which a lot of it is social. And
well,
yeah, so
I mean, honestly, the idea of a dialogue with other artists is probably a very good idea and would be good for me. I might get to some, you know, resolution of things faster if I talk to people.
Yes.
But occasionally I have people I trust, but like two. You know, when we come, they come and we talk about the work, but it's rare. It's rare. I really do spend most of my time by myself.
Is that very different from your life in New York? When you were in New York City, did you, because some people could be in the city and still work in relative isolation, but others kind of choose to seek that out.
That was me. I was married at the time I was living in Manhattan, and he was all about out, you know, all about meeting people and going places and dinners at these giant parties, and I would be miserable, frankly. But in hindsight, it was good. It was good, but living through it, and then I always had a separate studio space, and I would go there. There were a couple times I just left the party and went to my studio and slept there because it was just
too much. Yeah,
can't do it.
Well, it sounds like you're in a great place now. You have a beautiful studio in a lovely area.
I am,
and we have a good art community around you, so that's great.
Right. It's my life is pretty sweet, I have to say. I'm lucky.
There's one more question. If I can, the question. I'm curious when Melinda decides to use found objects in her work. Is the object the centerpiece of the idea, or are the objects sometimes added later to support the idea? And I think I understand. So do you find an object and that becomes the piece, or do you make the piece and then find something and
No,
that kind
it's
of...
the other way around. I have an idea, but like a lot of artists, I collect things, but it's always, you know, old seed pods, pieces of rusty steel, nails that are rusted through a board with rusty nails in it, broken pieces of concrete. I've had pieces of stuff for ever since the fire for 35 years. And then it'll be like, boom, ow. And they mean something. Each object has a meaning to me. But not, and then the piece I'm hoping has a meaning to the audience, but each piece has a little, it's like a little talisman kind of thing.
Interesting. Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I think that's all we have time for as far as questions.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? Or Melinda, is there anything else you feel like you'd still like to say? Or
well, no. I would just like to say that communities like Byrdcliffe and their artist in residency program are such little gems for the art community, particularly now. So
yes,
whoever, and I swear they didn't tell me to say this. This is my own feeling. Any kind of support that people can offer these days is a good idea.
And yes,
and that's
thank
the
you.
end of my speech.
That's great. And most artist residencies don't stop supporting artists when they're not physically there. I've been learning that the support can continue for years. So, that's true. I mean, supporting their work and promoting someone and connections. And so, yeah, it is a very important thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's so true. You don't, I mean, I'm guilty of thinking of things like sort of blinders sometimes. But having been involved with the artist in residency show, not me personally, but seeing what they do, and I've given some critiques there. And the funny thing is, I'll make visits to the artist in residency studios, and we will talk, and I don't go in there and go, well, I think you should move that over here. I leave so energized. I was stunned the first time how it was. And that, which brings me back a long way around, but to what you're saying is their residency is part of their person and the people they met there. And
it's true. Yeah.
You know,
well,
it's such a good thing. Hard to manage, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Makes the world a better place, I think.
It's big. There's a lot in there.
There is. Well, this has been a great conversation, and thanks so much to everyone who joined and asked questions and supported us. I had a great time getting to know your work better, Melinda, and I can't wait to see your show in Saugerties. And
yes.
Yeah, I'm reading the comments.
I'll be there, Carlin. You go in first.
Okay, I'll have my mask on, but
it opens August 1st, and I think it runs for 6 weeks. I think it's 6 weeks long.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it.
But we'll see. The governor could say, but what I know for sure is the space has a big window.
Oh, that's good. So if it comes to that, but I think we'll be able to get in.
So it's going to be there.
Yeah, that's good. That's so nice to have something to look forward to.
Thank you, everyone.
I just want to thank everyone for being a part of the Woodstock Byrdcliffe Guild community. And we plan to host more virtual events in the future. So please visit woodstockguild.org, Instagram and Facebook for the latest information updates. Our website also features items from the Byrdcliffe shop and information about becoming a member or supporter. So thanks so much and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.